Hello, friends. Welcome back to the While We're Waiting Hope After Child Loss podcast. I'm Jill Sullivan, your host and one of the co-founders of the While We're Waiting ministry. This is a podcast of stories of devastating loss and grief and heartbreak and struggle, and stories of hope and healing and faith and, yes, even joy. Underlying every conversation is the hope we have in Jesus Christ, which makes it possible to not just survive the loss of a child, but to live well while we're waiting to see them again in heaven one day. You can learn more about our ministry and the free bereaved parent retreats we host by visiting our website at www.whilewe'rewaiting.org. Welcome to episode number 279. Today I'm joined by my friend Cindy Shufflebarger. We met at the Our Hearts Are Home conference in Virginia last spring, and I knew right away I wanted you to hear her story. Cindy and her husband learned during pregnancy that their daughter Ashlynn had Trisomy 18, a diagnosis doctors described as incompatible with life. They chose to carry her, trusting God with whatever time He would give. Ashlynn lived for 3 precious days, surrounded by family and friends who came to meet and celebrate her. In our conversation, Cindy reflects on those sacred days, the grief that followed, and the ways God revealed His immeasurable love in her darkest moments. We'll talk about how journaling became both a record of that love and a path toward healing, the book that grew out of her writing, Dancing in the Rain, and how her ministry, P23 Retreat, now offers rest and renewal to other grieving parents. Cindy's story is a reminder that even in the hardest places, God's love truly cannot be measured. Let's listen in. Hi, Cindy. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Well, thank you, Jill. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I have been looking forward to having you on. I so enjoyed the opportunity we had to get to know each other a little bit at the Our Hearts Are Home conference. And we talked then about you coming on the podcast and sharing a little bit about Ashlynn's story and also about the ministry that God has called you to. So I'm really excited to have you here. Would you take just a moment and tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? Tell us where you're from and what life is like for you there.
Of course. So my husband and I have been married for almost 30 years, and we live just north of Richmond, Virginia, in a little town called Ashland. And gosh, life for us is a little bit busy. We have one child still in high school, one in college, and one who is a new married who just moved back to town with her husband. And so life is a little bit busy. We have just a small bit of land here. We live next to what used to be some farmland. There are now some homes there, but I enjoy getting out, walking through the woods, walking along the field, and just taking in the beauty of God's creation.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And what do you do there?
So I've transitioned recently from homeschooling mom to executive director, which was a kind of a big transition. We started a ministry called P23 Retreat. And interestingly enough, it's kind of been a culmination of all of my jobs I've had throughout my adult life, even in my teenage years. I'm getting to use all of those skills in this position, which is, again, God's beauty and all of that.
Yeah, isn't it neat how God prepares us for things that are to come in our lives before we ever know we're going to need those things?
Exactly. I could have never imagined. But yet here we are.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Well, we're going to be talking about your daughter, Ashlynn, today. But before we get into her story, I would love to hear how you chose her name. And it's an unusual name, and it's a beautiful name. And I always like to hear if there's a story behind a name like that.
There absolutely is a story. And her name, Ashlynn, is actually an Irish Gaelic name that means dream. And we actually went to Ireland for our 10th anniversary when I was pregnant with her. And we just fell in love with the name. And so we do spell it a little different. A lot of people just spell it Ashlyn. We spell it with 2 N's because my middle name was Lynn. And so it was a nod to mom. But yeah, and her middle name's Faith. Obviously, our faith journey has been a huge part of our story, and really, I drew closer to God during that season of my pregnancy and her life than ever before. And so we feel like we wanted to honor that piece too.
Yeah, a very rich name, full of meaning and beauty.
Right. Interesting thing is, I've never once dreamed about her, which I know some
Really?
people will have dreams about their children, but I never have, and so I don't really know what that means. But I think it's interesting. That's what her name means.
Yeah, beautiful name. So, when you were pregnant with Ashlynn, things seemed to be going along very well, and then you received a phone call from your doctor's office at 7:30 on a Friday night, which is never a good sign. Talk about that phone call and what followed from there.
Sure. The phone call itself, gosh, it's been 19 years ago. So the actual details of that phone call are a little bit murky, but I remember that weekend with clarity. I remember my husband and I kind of doing the what ifs, crying out to God, praying. Yeah, it was a hard weekend, not knowing what to expect. We had 2 young children at the time, and it was just a very scary time. And we did a lot of driving around. I guess my parents probably watched the kids while we were able to get away for the day and just talk and pray and process. So, yeah, I can very, my most vivid memory of that time, there's two. One is being in the ultrasound room and hearing the clicking of the technician typing, but being silent, like I knew something was wrong at that point. So it's just a very vivid sound. I'll never forget that. So, and then another day was, a couple of weeks later, those early weeks were the hardest trying to process this diagnosis and this news. And I can remember it was a very rainy day outside. And I just remember crying and having a pastor call and pray over me. So those are probably two of my most vivid memories in those early days.
Yeah, what was the diagnosis that they gave you?
So she had a condition called Trisomy 18, which the doctors deem incompatible with life. They encouraged me to terminate the pregnancy, and we declined. We said we want to honor this life, however God has made her. And they basically said, you know what, she's not going to be born alive. And so our prayer, we were bold. We asked for healing, but we said, God, your will. And so when she was born alive, we clearly knew that she was not healed, but we were thrilled that we got to meet her because we were told that that wasn't even going to be a possibility. And so her life was celebrated from early on.
How much time did you have with her?
So she lived for 3 days. She arrived on a Friday afternoon all day. So I ended up having to have a C-section. She was not tolerating natural childbirth because of the defects of her heart. And so my doctor did a C-section so that I would be able to hold her alive. They whisked my mom into the room so she could hold her. Like, I'm surprised they allowed this. But anyway, they gowned her up and whisked her into the room, let her hold her. And then she ran off to get my other 2 kids who were staying with a neighbor because I wanted them to be able to meet their sister. And we didn't know how long we would have. The next day, all day on Saturday, we probably had 50 people come through our hospital room. I had some protective family members trying to keep people away. And I was like, no, I want everyone to meet my daughter. And so while it was exhausting, it was beautiful. And then she passed the next evening, which there's a God story in that too. He was comforting and faithful and all of that as well.
Yeah. I love that so many people got to meet her.
Right?
Because that makes her so real to all of those people, you know?
Yeah. They got to hold her and rock her. And yeah, I wouldn't trade those days for anything.
Yeah. Now you said it was a God story as she was passing. Talk about that.
So hopefully you'll laugh at this. My husband is not one to miss a meal. Let's just say he enjoys his food. So he was he had gone downstairs to the cafeteria and was having something to eat. And he said he was 3 bites in and he attributes it to the Holy Spirit. He felt the need that he needed to get up, throw his dinner away and come upstairs. And literally within the minute of him walking back is when she was having her last episode. She would have these apnea episodes. And so he was there with me. And again, he didn't know the timing of things or why he was throwing his dinner out, but God brought him back up to the room at just the right time.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That is really special. So what were the days like after that when you had to go home from the hospital without your baby?
Right. I remember my doctor walking in and she's like, "Are you ready to go home?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, do you want to stay another day?" And I said, "No." And that's the space we live in, right? We don't, we just don't want to be in this space. We don't want to move forward. We can't go back. It's a very hard space. And I had been growing in my faith all throughout my pregnancy and completely dependent on the Lord. And that weekend, or really that day when she passed, I told a friend that I was struggling. I was like, I can't even pray. It's not anger. It was more of a numbness, a confusion, a fog. Like, I can't make sense of things. And I'm like, please pray for me that I find a desire to pray again. I just have no words. I can't pick up my Bible. I can't form words. And thankfully, she was very fervently praying for me. And within about 2 weeks, I was back to that place of engaging and picking up my Bible and praying. So
So it took time.
it did take time. And I can remember, we had family in town and they wanted to welcome me back. Leaving the hospital without your baby is indescribable. I had a little box with some keepsakes from her. Very hard and people are looking at you because you're being wheeled out. And I have this little box instead of a baby in my arms. And so just all of it, there's a lot of things that are a blur about it. Trying to plan a funeral, somehow it never occurred to me that I needed to plan a funeral. I was so busy praying and celebrating her that all of those details hadn't occurred, which I'm glad they weren't taking up space in my mind. I wanted to celebrate her. But anyway, it was a flurry of activity in those early days. And just a hard time, as you know.
Yeah. And then I imagine when that flurry of activity dies down, then the reality begins to set in for you.
Sure, because life goes on normal for everyone. They get back to their lives, and again, very lovely family, friends, well-meaning people that just don't understand. And of course, life is going to go on for them. Life goes on for us too. We just have to figure out what that's going to look like now with the absence of our daughter. I can remember a friend coming over, and I had very low tolerance for trivial things in that season, and she was trying to decide between which outfit to buy for her kid. And I can remember just internally wanting to scream because I was like, you have your kid. Like, who cares what outfit you buy? Obviously I was using those. I didn't want to say those things, but it was just a hard season.
Yeah. I think all of us can relate to conversations like that. I know I had no patience at all for trivial things. We often say after the loss of a child, it feels like everybody around us wants to talk about kindergarten and we want to talk calculus. And it sounds like you experienced that as well. So how long after Ashlynn went to heaven did you begin writing?
Well, that's an interesting story. So I actually started writing before she was born. So I had a mentor who for years tried to get me to journal. And I always made every excuse in the book. I didn't want to do it. And finally, she looked at me and she said, "If the God of the universe takes time to speak to you, don't you think it's important enough to write it down?" And I thought, well, I really can't argue with that. And so I started journaling, and I would write down Bible verses that I felt like were, making an impact on me, or just things that were happening around me, prayers that I was praying. And it was about a month later that I found out I was pregnant with Ashlynn. And so God just prepared me. I started writing in those journals more and more, obviously, as we got the diagnosis, and I was leaning on God for strength and just to live day to day, it felt like. And so after she died, I started to question God's love for me. I wasn't angry, but I was like, you know what? He could have healed her. He did not heal her. That must mean he doesn't love me. Well, I know that's not the truth, but that's what I was feeling. And so I went back and looked in my journals, and I could see evidence of his love for me over and over and over again in my very own handwriting. And so as I just started pouring through my journals because I needed that reassurance of God's love for me. So she died in August and I started writing in January formally. And I wasn't sure really where I was going with it, but essentially the 10 chapters of the book that I wrote came from things that God was teaching me during that season as he was preparing me. And so, yeah, it was very healing to start writing.
Yeah. So it was helpful for you in processing your grief. I found that to be the case as well. I started writing a blog after Hannah went to heaven, and it was such an immense help to me just to write things out that I was thinking and feeling. And it sounds like you discovered that as well.
Yes.
So you began writing the book 18 years ago. And as you look back on it now, how do you see that you have changed over the years?
So it's been interesting. It truly has been a gift for you to invite me to talk about Ashlynn
Yeah.
and to revisit the pages of the book because, yeah, it's just been nice to kind of go back and see how far and how faithful God has been in this journey. It's hard for me sometimes to reread parts of the book simply because I know that my writing has grown and I have grown in my faith. And so there's beauty in that to see how much growth and faithfulness of God that I have seen over the years. But sometimes it's hard to see where I was. Again, that's all of God's doing a work in us and he's going to bring it to completion in his perfect time. But so I guess it's nice to be able to look back and actually see evidence of that. Just as my journals, when I was writing all throughout my pregnancy, I saw evidence of God's love for me. I have seen evidence of growth by going back and reading what I wrote all those years ago.
Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of keeping a journal after the loss of a child, because you can really see how God brings you and grows you over the years. So, yeah, that's a blessing. Mhm.
Yes.
So, the title of your book is Dancing in the Rain, Finding Joy in the Midst of the Storm. Where did that title come from?
So I did one day when I was writing, it was raining out, which was very fitting, right? But I decided that I think it was New Year's Day. And I decided that I was going to go out and dance in the rain. And it just seemed fitting. I really wanted to focus on how to find joy. And part of that was I wasn't ready to step into this space of, um, I didn't want to be identified as the grief lady.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about joy. And it's taken years to get to this place of being able to step back into sharing about grief. But really, just dancing in the rain seemed appropriate because there was so much beauty that I saw through God and my faith journey during that whole season. While it was hard and I would never have invited it, there were things in that season that I can't imagine having experienced any other way about the goodness of God.
Mhm. Well, just going back to your title, there are things we can learn in the rain that we can't learn in the sunshine.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Right. And I would say that I felt closest and most connected and dependent during that season. And those aren't words that our culture necessarily celebrate, but there was a peacefulness that came with that.
Yeah, absolutely. In your book, you talk about how you morphed into a creature that was unrecognizable after Ashlynn died. Would you mind talking about that?
Sure. So, if I must, no,
Hard to go
yeah,
back there. Yeah.
right. So there was so much out of my control, and I felt the need to find some sense of order and control. And I was grieving. My husband was grieving very differently than I was, had two young children at home. I sent my oldest to kindergarten 2.5 weeks after Ashlynn died. Like, it would have been an emotional time just sending your first to kindergarten. Here I am trying to be protective of her, worried about her. My other child was showing some health issues that we couldn't get to the bottom of. And part of me was wondering how much of this is grief related. I couldn't find a counselor for the girls. Anyway, it just was a time looking back, it really felt chaotic and out of control. And I desperately tried to find control where I could find control.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, which is really kind of, I mean, it makes sense in one regard, but counterintuitive in the other. I was so dependent on God all throughout the pregnancy. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, yikes, he didn't do what I thought he was going to do. I've got to take the reins back over. So just a hard season in that regard.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You attended a Christian women's conference about just 5 weeks after Ashlynn went to heaven. That's not very long. What did you experience there?
This is one of my favorites. I still can get teary talking about it. So I tried to back out of it. In
Sure.
hindsight, I can't even believe I signed up for it, knowing all that was happening. But God knew I needed to be there, I suppose. And I was trying to back out of it. My husband's like, oh no, you're going. Because he thought it would be good for me to be with a group of women in a place where I could just step away and have some time. And so I went off to this conference not knowing what the title of the event was. It was just the speaker, she would do these simulcasts around the country. And anyway, she didn't usually post the topic, but you knew that she was going to be teaching. Anyway, I show up, and the first thing I learn is it's called God's Immeasurable Love for You. And like, I literally gasped. Like, I was in that season of wrestling. God, I didn't think God loved me. Like, he
Right?
could have healed me. He could have healed her. He chose not to. He must not love me. That's where I was. And so to hear that was the topic of the weekend, I was like, could it be? And so that first Friday night, like, she went through all of the ways that God gives measurements throughout the Bible, very specific details. And yet when he talks about his love for us, he says it's immeasurable. And so I kind of had this experience that night of, okay, I hear that in my head. I need to get that into my heart. And so the next day it was another full day of sessions, and I was listening. There were several things that happened that were impactful along the way, but in the afternoon, she said, we're going to turn this arena into a sanctuary of prayer. So anyone that needs to take a break, you go take a break. Anyone that wants to pray, stay here and pray. And so I was sitting way up, kind of in the nosebleed seats. And I was all alone at that point. The rest of my group they were taking a break, and I just sat and I cried out to God. I was sobbing, and I was like, God, I hear this message that you love me, but I need it. I need something in a real and tangible way. Make it real to me. And within minutes, there was this woman that appeared. I don't know where she came from. She must have seen me up there. She put her arms around me from behind, prayed over me that you are chosen and you are loved. God sees you. And I know God sent her to me. I don't know what prompted her, but she disappeared as quickly as she appeared, she disappeared. And I felt like, you know what? God heard my cry and answered in that moment. And so it's a memory that will stay with me forever.
Absolutely. I love that the theme of the conference was immeasurable love.
Right?
And I've never thought about that before, how particular God is all throughout the Bible, especially the Old Testament, with exact measurements,
Right?
and then says that his love for us is immeasurable. That's amazing.
Right?
Yeah. Thank you for
And
sharing
then
that.
for me to say, I need something like I want to feel your arms.
Yeah. And then that woman came and put her arms. Yeah, that's awesome.
It was a very healing moment for me.
Sure.
That whole weekend, but especially that moment.
Yeah. I love that. I love how God knows just what we need in our grief, and he provides it for us. How important is it to be honest with God in our grief?
I think it's really important. So I had been part of a Bible study group of ladies. We would take a different book and study. And so they had been praying for me. They made a quilt and all sorts of things to celebrate Ashlynn for me. But they picked, and again, I don't know if they did this on purpose or if it just God's timing, but a few weeks after Ashlynn died, they started up another group session. And the book they picked was called No Holds Barred, Wrestling with God in Prayer. And I thought, ooh, I can get behind this.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
now there's a great book about lament. And I didn't really even know that term 20 years ago or
Right.
18 years ago, but that's what that book was. It gave me permission to wrestle with God in prayer, and it was exactly what I needed. So he provided even in that. I think we absolutely need to be honest, because obviously very much grew in my faith. I loved God, but there was still the God, why couldn't this have been different? Or it's just it's hard. And I think giving those honest questions to him is where healing comes. I don't think we can just give pat answers and expect that he just wants us to get over it. Like, that's not, he didn't build us that way, and that's not how he engages us.
Yeah, I agree. And like you 16 years ago when Hannah went to heaven, nobody was talking about lament.
Right.
That was just something that was never discussed. And I'm so glad that that has come to the fore now and it's openly talked about in Christian circles and among grieving people. So that's cool that God brought that study to you at just exactly the right time, just what you needed. It's natural to question why when worrying and in pain. How did you deal with the why questions?
um so I had my times of asking why. I more often than not tried to ask what. So, what do you want me to do with this? Or what can I know about you in this? Because the why things didn't feel terribly productive. And again, I think it's natural to say why, because again, if we're going to be honest with God, don't we wonder why?
Right? Sure.
And so I think we need to bring that to him in an honest sense. But I felt like I was able to, I don't love the word productive, but in sense of grief, but it felt like it helped me in making sense of things and seeing all of the attributes of God when I was asking what instead of the why.
Yeah. And that's a big shift to go from why to what.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right. And sometimes it wasn't even what, it was just show me.
Mm.
You know, I might not understand why, but show me something about who you are, or show me how to rest, or show me what you want.
Yeah.
It might be semantics, but I try to focus more on not getting hung up on the why. I think one day we may know, we may understand. I even now though, I can look back and see a million good things that came from her life, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it is nice when you can look back over years and see the redemption that God has brought through our pain. It's hard to see when you're early on, but you
Right.
can see it over time. And that's kind of this next question. It's been almost 19 years since Ashlyn went to heaven. How do you feel like your grief has evolved through that time?
So I like to equate it as, it used to be a bully, and now it's kind of a quiet friend that walks alongside of me. I really feel like my grief is a reminder of how much I loved my daughter. And
Yes.
so I'm not really I don't have the same fear of it like it used to. I don't know. I'm not sure that's the best way to describe it, but like there are times where I will actually bring out a playlist from that time in my life because I just want to remember, and the music takes me to that place. And so I will allow myself, I'll go into another room for an hour and just listen to music. I might cry, I might pray, I might write, but it makes me remember. And I want to remember. I don't want to forget her. And so, yeah, it's weird how grief has changed, but it definitely has.
Sure. I love the thought of grief changing from a bully to a friend or maybe a gentle friend. Yeah, that's a really neat concept. I like that. So think back if you can to those early days, those days that that music brings you back to. What advice would you give to a parent who is right there at the very beginning of their grief journey?
Mm. Well, first, I would just want to grab them and hug them.
Yeah, sure.
you know, Gosh, it breaks my heart when I meet other parents that are walking the same journey.
Yeah.
So in terms of advice, I would remind them that their grief is indeed a picture of their love for their child. So they don't need to stuff it. They don't need to get over it. Yes, we want to process it in healthy ways, but you can get to this place of remembering without the sharp immediate pain. And again, would I tell somebody that right at first? Probably not. Maybe what I would tell them at first is you're going to be exhausted. Grief is hard work. So rest. You're going to be fatigued. You're going to have mental fog. Like I didn't know any of those things, but I would also recommend that somebody work with a grief counselor. Like I did that week 3. I started working with a grief counselor and she kind of educated me to what grief does to the body, what it does to the brain. And it gave me permission to not beat myself up, not feel like I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps and carry on. Like it was freeing to hear what I could expect realistically and to know that I needed to care for my body as well
Mhm.
as my emotions.
Yeah. And I think we focus a lot on emotions and grief and we forget about what it does to our body,
Right.
especially a mother who has just given birth a few weeks before and all the physical changes that you go through with that in addition to the grief. Yeah. That's good advice to rest, to give yourself permission to rest.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Well, and I had 2
Mhm.
other young children at home too, so, it was hard navigating some of that, but I would nap whenever I could nap and just know that just kept telling myself the season I didn't wanna rush the season because my biggest fear early on was I was gonna forget, that she was gonna be forgotten, and, I didn't want to rush through it, but I also didn't like the pain of being in it, and I also didn't wanna leave her behind. It's a very conflicted feeling, especially in those early days.
Yeah. Yeah. And giving yourself grace goes a long way in working through all of that. Yeah. Thank you. One of the things that can be most helpful for a parent in the early days or years of grief is some time away, like you said, to rest and just refresh, recoup, those kinds of things. And that's where your ministry comes in. P23 is the name of your ministry. Where does that name come from, first of all? And then tell us a little bit about your mission.
Sure. So the P23 and P23 Retreat actually is named for Psalm 23 and this image of still waters, green meadows, the Lord providing, the Lord restoring, and rest. So that's how we got the name. And it was actually inspired by family members who sent us away to their beach house for a long weekend about 3 months after Ashlynn died. So my parents kept our other 2 kids, and they were like, "You guys just get away for the weekend." And when you're trying to figure out what's happening and you're still trying to keep up with life and the daily demands, it's just exhausting. And there's hard to connect with your spouse. It's hard to figure out, putting one foot in front of the other is just takes all the energy you have.
Right?
And so when Scott and I reflected on our grief, probably about 5 years in, we were talking about how differently we had grieved. But one of the things that we said was most helpful to both of us was that weekend away. And so we said, you know what, we want to do that for people one day. And so one day is here. And so we founded P23 Retreat as a way to, our mission is simply creating space for parents to grieve. So we send people on a private retreat. We send them with resources, try to get them plugged in locally because we can serve in multiple states. I think we served in 15 states now. We primarily use Airbnbs and we send couples away for 3 to 4 nights within about a 2-hour drive of wherever they are. And we try to find something restful for them.
Yeah, I love that. What a valuable ministry that is.
Mm. Yeah, again, it was so helpful for us, and we've gotten great feedback. We've been serving people for about 2.5 years now, so we're still fairly new,
Yeah.
but we've got very positive feedback about what it has meant to just push pause and rest. It's they can do what they need to do. We obviously want them plugged into other grief resources. We encourage group retreats because that's a way to connect with other parents. We encourage grief therapists. We encourage support groups, all of the things. We are just one touch point. But as you know, the journey's long. And
Right.
so it's really just an opportunity for people to rest and kind of recenter themselves and take a break.
Yeah. What are the qualifications to come to a P23 retreat?
Sure. So we obviously, to be a bereaved parent, we'll serve anyone that's experienced stillborn loss all the way up to adulthood. We don't have a cutoff. We do try to serve people in the first 2 years of their loss, because we really feel like that's when the most of that fatigue and brain fog and all of that's happening. And so that's really our primary target. That's not hard and fast though. If someone's a little bit further in their journey and they're still really struggling, we have served people beyond that as well. But yeah, those are really the only qualifications, is to be a bereaved parent. We do ask someone to kind of sign off on their retreat form, just confirming that indeed they're appropriate to go away on a private retreat
Sure.
and we don't allow kids. We've gotten a lot of requests to take kids, and unfortunately, while we see the value of processing grief with your kids, like this really is designed for the parents to take a break. So if someone is single, they're allowed to take a support person. We've had some moms want to take a mom or a sister or a friend. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you serve single parents as well.
we will. Yes.
Yes, I
Yes.
love that. So if a family was to go, or a couple or a single were to go on a P23 retreat, what would they experience?
So they would first start off with a Zoom call with us so that they can see us, we can see them. They go through a little bit of a questionnaire just to kind of get a sense of where they are in their grief so that we have a good idea of what resources to try to connect them with. And so there's that interview process that's about an hour on Zoom. And then we have a care coordinator who helps them find a property that would be appropriate for them. So they can say, oh, we love the mountains, or we like water, whatever it might be. And we will do our best to try to accommodate that within our budget. And we'll send them a couple of different properties to choose from. Primarily, we're using Airbnbs. We do have a few folks that have donated spaces to us. But then they will, after they've determined their property, there's paperwork, they have to sign off saying that they're going to respect the property and that kind of stuff, just your normal things. And then we send them a care package with some resources in there that includes a prayer journal, the My Messy Grief journal. There's an ornament with their child's name on it, and then just some other resources. So they'll get that as well as a $200 Visa gift card to help with gas or food while they're away. Yeah, and then we follow up with them for the first year. We try to get them plugged into our social media where we do some educational type things. We have prayers on there. We now have our podcast, but we will send them cards on Easter, Christmas, their child's birthday, Mother's Day, Father's Day, that kind of thing, just to let them know that they're being prayed for. Oh, and the other big component is while they're on their retreat, there's a team of 3 people praying for them each day. We give, they can contribute to what things they want prayed for. And if they don't, we just have a kind of a standard set of things that we're praying for safe travel and rest and good conversations and those kinds of things.
Yeah, I love that. It's just such a well-rounded opportunity for people. You've thought of everything. And I love the prayer team that
Right.
prays for people while they're there. That's very cool. So if someone is listening and wants to learn more about P23 Retreat, either for themselves or for someone else, how could they do that?
So they can reach out on our website, p23retreat.org. There's a way to connect with us there by sending us an email. There's a request form that they can download. There are also some resources, as you know, that are free downloads that you can access there. Yeah, they can also find us on our social media, whether that's Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're very active on social media, which is great. What if somebody has a Airbnb that they might like to donate for your use? Could they reach you also through your website?
They can, yes. And so we've had some people just want to donate like a family home, but we don't accept those types of donations simply because sometimes there will be like pictures or personal effects that might be triggering to somebody who's grieving. And
Sure.
we also don't want people to feel like they have to, bring their own sheets and those kinds of things. So that we for donations, we do request that the place is in a rental program of some sort, and they could certainly reach out to us through there. Airbnb also has a nonprofit arm. We have not made it into their view yet, but people who own Airbnbs can recommend us and
Oh, good.
nominate us to be part of that program. So we're hoping over time that may happen, and then they might partner with us as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Just living here in Hot Springs, Arkansas, I feel like there are people that might have an Airbnb property that might be willing to make it available to you. So I will keep that in mind.
Yes, please do. So, and people can donate. They can say, "Oh, you can use it in my off season." Like grief
Right.
knows no season, so it doesn't have to be the height of your season. If you want to donate the space, you can say, "You know what? I'll do one weekend or one 3 night stay every year." Or they might say, "You know what? If it's available, you can use it." There's some people that say, "Can you cover the cleaning fee?" Yes, we will cover your cleaning fee if you want to. So we will work with people and accept any of those donations.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good to know. I encourage everybody to go to that P23 Retreat website because, like you said, it's got some amazing resources on it. One of the things I found was this checklist that you've designed that you can use to communicate your wants and needs to your friends and family. I have never seen anything like that before. That would have been so helpful for me after Hannah died because I am not somebody who is comfortable asking for help at all. But if I had had that, which is more like a checklist that I
Mhm.
could give people who asked,
Right.
that would have been very empowering for me. I'm also, my listeners know that most of my listeners know that if I get started crying, I can't talk at all. And so it was very hard for me to communicate with people about what my wants and needs were because I would get choked up and then I just would have to give up talking. So I love that checklist. So y'all go to the website and look at that, find that checklist. Remind us one more time. What is your website?
It's P23Retreat.org.
Yeah. And all of your books are available there too, as well. I wanted to mention the Messy Grief Journal. Is that available on that site or just Amazon?
It's on Amazon.
Okay. Talk about that Messy Grief Journal. What is that about?
So the My Messy Grief Journal is really a set of activities. It's done on colorful paper, but it's a place just to help process your grief with all five senses and however the mood might strike you. So some of the things are simply take your shoes off and go walk out in the grass and find something you can see, something you can smell, something you can hear, like those types of activities that just gives your some of them are to give your mind a rest and
Yeah.
other things help you think about your grief and think about your loved one. And so some of them involve some writing, some of them are textural things, cooking type activities. So they're just meant to be practical ways to engage and process your grief in a way that maybe doesn't happen necessarily in our day to day lives.
And I love that because not everybody processes through writing like you and I do. A lot of people process in all different ways, and that My Messy Grief Journal hits them all. And I love that. And it's beautiful. I love the way it looks. So you mentioned that you have a podcast. Talk about your podcast. Tell us about it.
So, the My Messy Grief podcast, I really wanted to add a new voice to the grief community. And so, I wanted it to be a way for people to do short bursts of activities that might help them in processing their grief. And so, just to give you an example of some folks that we've had, I had somebody come talk about butterfly gardening and the benefits of
using that as a tool for grieving. And so she taught us how to do a butterfly garden, and she wove in ideas or experiences from her own grief journey. She's not a bereaved parent, but she's experienced a lot of loss in her life. Someone else came and talked about and this was a bereaved dad. He talked about the role of sports and recreation. We had an interior designer who talked about what to do with the child's room.
Cool.
And also how to create peaceful spaces within and around your house. So I know we have scheduled, someone's going to come talk about, we have a florist that's going to be joining us soon. I have someone that actually does theater as part of a grief experience. So I'm excited to kind of hear what she does. She's a faith-based organization as well. And so I'm just trying to find creative ways that people and activities that might be helpful as we walk this journey.
I love that. How do we find your podcast?
So currently the podcast is either, you can see the video of it even on our YouTube channel, which is at P23 Retreat. And then it's also on Spotify.
Okay. I will put those links in the show notes for you so people can find it. That would be great. I would like to start listening to it myself because I can learn from that. So thank you. So as we close, is there a particular scripture or scriptures that have been especially helpful to you on your grief journey?
It started with "Be still and know that I am God," Psalm 46. That in those early days of learning the news, that gave me hope.
Yeah.
And then I would say the other one is Romans 15:13. I don't have it in front of me, but may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him. Mm-hmm. I didn't get that quite right, but go look it up.
Exactly.
Pull your Bible out and look for it, right? That's always been an encouragement to me.
Yeah, absolutely. One more question I always like to ask, and that is my question about music. And just from what you said about that music from that time period around when Ashlynn was born in the early days of your grief, I have that same connection to the music that was popular during the year of Hannah's cancer and then following. It's amazing how music can bring you, a song can bring you right back to those early moments of grief, and it can be helpful and it can also be hard. So, what songs are on your playlist?
My favorite of all actually came out just after Ashlynn's death, but it's called Audrey's Song. It's by Selah, and they lost a daughter. Similar story. Are you familiar with the song?
I don't think I've heard that one. No.
You'll need to look it up. It's beautiful. It talks about how there were still things I wanted to do. There were pictures I wanted to take. And then it shifts, and it's God speaking back to the griever saying, I showed her pictures of the parted sea. I've showed her all of these things through the years. And it's just a very touching song. So I would say that's probably been my favorite.
Yeah.
There were several Casting Crowns songs that were helpful to me along the way. Yeah, lots of different artists, but I keep the playlist on my computer and just can go and sit and listen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty much wound up our conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we go?
I just want to say thank you to you. What amazing work that you and Brad are doing and all of your team of folks. Gosh, having gone to one of your retreats, it was very powerful. I met some lovely people, and yeah, you guys are doing amazing things. And what a heart you have for just loving these families. And so thank you. I know it's not an easy thing to step into. And I pray for you for rest and for strength, and that God brings all of the right people and meets every single need for you.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for that. And I love the ministry that you have. And I love that, those of us that work with bereaved parents and are called to grief ministry, it's not a ministry we would ever choose for sure.
Right.
But I love that we can work hand in hand, us and you guys and Our Hearts Are Home and the sibling retreats that are coming along, all of these different ministries. And I just love that God gives grace to all of us and that we are called to do this work and there are blessings in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a joy to meet you, and I'm so glad that our paths have crossed, and now we get to know each other in another level too. And I in my mind believe that our daughters are together in
That's right.
heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. Hannah would love Ashlynn. I can tell you that. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I enjoyed our visit today.
Yeah. Thanks, Jill.
What a beautiful reminder from Cindy that even in the deepest sorrow, God's love is truly immeasurable. I'm so grateful for the way she shared Ashlynn's story and how her life, though brief by the world standards, continues to make an eternal impact. If you'd like to learn more about Cindy's ministry, P23 Retreat, or her books, Dancing in the Rain and My Messy Grief Journal, you'll find those links in the show notes. And if this conversation spoke to you, I encourage you to share it with another grieving parent who might need to hear about God's sustaining love. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you'll come back next week as we continue to share stories of hope and healing for those of us who walk this road of child loss.